Hello, welcome to the debate on Sky News. I'm Martin Stanford. Here's our take on President Obama's diplomatic week, visiting the leaders of the world's dominant oil producer and the world's largest democracy. He spoke of human rights and boosting economic ties.
So for all these reasons, India and the United States are not just natural partners. I believe America can be India's best partner. I believe that.
President Modi, you remember President Obama visited there in 2010, and India wasn't really the focus of the trip at the time. It was more Pakistan. The fact that India and the United States are two strong democracies, having President Obama sit in that box for 2 hours in that weather as India showed off its top military with a lot of Russian tanks and equipment and very little from the United States. That should give the president a little pause. But I think it's important symbolism for the people of India because it really tells the world that India really has a place on the world global economic stage.
Well, let's now go to New Delhi, the capital of India, and Colonel Raj Singh Rathore is the Minister of Information there. How pleased was India to welcome the President of the USA?
Well, let me say that India and all the citizens were very excited by the President of the United States being here. And of course, the Prime Minister is a very popular figure in India. And every frame on television, which was very well covered by all the news channels, was watched very keenly by all the Indians, especially the chemistry between both of them and the great amount of strides that we've taken forward. Yes, a very exciting week despite the rains during the Republic Day parade. I think the spirit was very high, very demonstrable of the feelings, what everybody felt with the President of the United States with us.
Let's talk about business, shall we? First of all, American businessmen often complain that it's really difficult to try and set up a business, to get a business going and to smooth out all the problems when dealing with an Indian location. Do you accept that criticism?
Yes, absolutely. They're right about their concern, and that's why our Prime Minister time and again says that instead of red tapeism, we're going to lay out a red carpet for them. It's going to take a lot of effort, but we are on a mission, and we will do it, and we will achieve it.
Let me bring in Armstrong and Jeffrey now, who are joining in the conversation. That's key, though, isn't it, Armstrong, that you can get some really meaningful business relationships, some meaningful trade with this huge country and its vast population.
Oh yes, and also as far as India is concerned, they talked about some working together in a very bilateral way on their nuclear program. They expect to even make big announcements. And what is not seen as often beyond both presidents is the fact that they bring their top trade people, some of their top officials to do the heavy lifting, working on things that they can do in a very substantive way that will move the country forward. Because listen, there's one thing that the United States and India has in common that I don't think any of us has mentioned yet, and it's that place called China. China is not only a threat in some ways to the United States, but it's an even bigger threat to India. And it makes all the sense in the world for President Obama to shore up our support and alliance with India as this threat continues to loom coming from China.
Jeffrey, is that mutually exclusive relationship then, that the Americans cuddle up to the Indians because they don't want to cuddle up to the Chinese?
Well, that's certainly part of it. The other gorilla in the room, of course, is Pakistan. The president's visit in 2010 centered on that. And I'd like to ask the minister, given the less than ideal relations that both India and the United States have with Pakistan, what was discussed, what can be done, and can the United States count on India, or does India even have any influence when it comes to Pakistan and the fight against al-Qaeda and the Islamic terrorists?
It's in any case, the terrorism is a global threat, and hence it's just not one country alone, but a combination of various countries that needs to fight it. At levels of course, the insurgents and the terrorists themselves, but also on the financial aspects of it. And that's where we moved ahead, and we've had agreements with the United States on how we can control the money laundering and the funding, terror funding that goes on in the world. Of course, the United States has also put pressure on Pakistan to rein in and to control and to absolutely curb the terrorist activities in their country. On the eve of the visit, of course, the Pakistan banned certain organizations, froze certain accounts, but it has to be a long-term policy decision by Pakistan. Pakistan itself is suffering from terrorism.
Sure, but I mean, just to press the point on that, would it not be ideal if America, Pakistan and India can work together to try and have more effective anti-terror measures?
Why not? Absolutely. And India is absolutely open to it. Pakistan is one of the key stakeholders to reduction of terrorism in the area. It has at some point of time propagated it, and now it's a victim of its own policies, even if it's backyard policies.
Jeffrey?
Yes, Minister, does India even have any influence with Pakistan?
Well, we have the sort of influence that any neighboring country can have over its neighbor. We are militarily very strong. We have in the recent times, on cross-border firings answered very aggressively. But that's not a long-term solution, is it? And hence, we will have to work on a very comprehensive policy to curb and reduce global terrorism all around.
Colonel Rathore, can I just talk about another topic which I know was brought up by the President, and that is gender equality. Here's a man who's got 2 daughters growing up fast, and he wants to see a world, whichever country they live in, or with fathers like him, whichever country they grow up in, have equal opportunity. Do you accept India's got a long way to go to achieve that?
We need to cover that distance as fast as possible, and that's why in this Republic Day parade we demonstrated the women power, women in the armed forces, women in different spheres of life. Just prior to the Republic Day parade, the Prime Minister spoke to the nation and on Save the Girl Child and Educate the Girl Child. We're trying to bring it into every sphere of our activity, to bring it into our mind space. Understand that in the rural areas and even in urban areas, the mindset towards a girl child needs to change in India. It's many decades of fallacy that people have. We have to work on it. The time is less, but the government, as you can imagine and as you can see, is working aggressively towards it.
It's interesting the President bothered to mention it, Jeffrey.
Well, you can understand why he mentioned it, because it's an important thing. What concerns me is the fact that culturally and religiously, there is no indication that it will change. I don't know why it would, just because the Indian government wants it to change. When you go out into the more remote areas, they're not listening to the government about that stuff. They're listening to their religious and cultural leaders.
Unless we don't put in an effort, we don't move in the direction, till the time we don't sensitize the population, we don't make them realize that a girl child is as good as a male child, we will not move ahead. Remember that we've eradicated polio from our country by a campaign, through a concerted effort. We can do the same even now.
Can you change attitudes? And we hear, I know there are high-profile cases of attitudes to women who've been attacked, and the judicial system doesn't seem necessarily to treat those cases particularly fairly, or it seems to have a very male bias to it. Can you change that in the next generation, in the next few years?
Martin, my take on that is that it's not through a judicial system or policing only that you can change the mindsets of people. I think it is the attitudes of the people through a concerted approach, through education, through society changes, through leaders through religious leaders, and perhaps from the film industry, from the television. These are the ways that you will gradually bring in the importance of a girl child and change the society.
One other topic, one other theme, I think, which came up in the conversation, this loops us back into business, is that of climate change. Now, I know America's a long way further down, if you like, the developed economy, and they're looking at new energy sources. Do you accept, as part of today's Indian government, that it's important that a massive country like India also embraces the problems of climate change and tries to do its bit to reduce emissions?
Climate change is a global problem. It's affecting all of us. And like our Prime Minister very candidly put it across, that we don't face pressures through countries or people, but we face the pressure that what are we going to hand over to our next generation? And hence we will work towards the greening of our industries. And for that, the United States is ready to help us.
Is that an opportunity, would you say, Armstrong, then, for American businesses who are further down the track in developing clean energy than perhaps the Indians are? That's one area of natural collaboration?
You know what? In the sort of the intergovernment climate negotiation, India has constantly argued against greenhouse gas mitigation commitments for developing countries. They've always fought it. They feel that it's a burden on them, given just the number of people and the vehicles that they have. They just think that this is just such an overburdensome for them to even try to even contemplate. I think it's unfair to sort of compare the climate change progress that we've made in the United States with the problems that India has to face every day, and especially it has such a huge segment of poverty and the different classes there in that country. But I think we've seen progress. Obviously, there's much more progress that can be made, but I think they're far more challenged in that area than we are.
Is that fair, Jeffrey, that if you like, the Green lobby have to be patient with countries like India? They will get there, but they need a bit more time?
Well, they have to be patient. There's no evidence that they will ever get there. That's the hope and that's the wish, but it may not happen. After all, you're talking about a huge population. You're also talking about a huge rural population. But that's why trade is so important, because trade, once you have a really healthy trade situation going in both directions, then businesses have an influence. And when it comes down to money, people tend to listen a lot more than when you simply hit them with rhetoric.
Colonel Rathore, would you put trade as the biggest winner out of this week's exchanges?
I think undoubtedly we've moved ahead in cooperation in different fields, be it defense, education, manufacturing, trade, services, finance. But the most important thing I feel is the feel-good factor between the people of the two nations, the coming together of the two nations, the coming together of the President and the Prime Minister of India, and setting up, firstly, sending message to the bureaucrats that we will resolve, no matter what, the issues that we are faced with jointly and move forward. And as well as now setting up of a hotline between the President and the Prime Minister so that any issue that comes up can be resolved at the earliest. I think it all gets summed up by forward we go together, and together and with shared partnership we progress, and all of us progress together.
Joining us from New Delhi, Colonel Rathore, the Minister of Information. We thank you very much.